My parents banned me from the reunion, so I let them walk into the beach house I secretly owned. Marina stared at the Instagram post on her laptop screen, her coffee growing cold in the pristine silence of her Manhattan office. There it was, the annual Rodriguez family reunion announcement, complete with location details and her cousins. Excited comments about the week-long celebration in the Hamptons. 5 years had passed since her parents had made it crystal clear she wasn't welcome at these gatherings, not after she'd chosen to build her own tech startup, instead of following their dream of her becoming a doctor. The familiar ache of rejection settled in her chest as she scrolled through photo after photo of relatives she hadn't seen since that devastating confrontation in their Chicago home. Her mother's words still echoed in her mind. "If you won't respect our family's values, then you're no longer family." She closed the laptop with more force than necessary, the sound echoing through her corner office overlooking Central Park. Outside, the March wind rattled the windows of the 42nd floor, matching the storm of emotions brewing inside her. Marina had built Rodriguez Digital Solutions from nothing more than a laptop and a dream, turning it into a multi-million-dollar company that specialized in helping small businesses transition to digital platforms. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd kept her family name for the business, even after they'd essentially disowned her. Her assistant knocked gently on the door, reminding her about the afternoon meeting with potential investors. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across her mahogany desk as Marina made a decision that surprised even herself. She opened her laptop again and began researching the exact location mentioned in the family reunion post. Within minutes, she'd pulled up property records for the Hamptons area, her heart racing as she recognized the address. It couldn't be a coincidence. The house they'd chosen for their reunion was located just 3 blocks from a stunning beachfront property she'd purchased anonymously 2 years ago through a shell company. The 8-bedroom mansion with its own private beach access had been one of her most extravagant purchases, originally intended as a weekend retreat. Now, staring at the aerial view on her screen, Marina felt something she hadn't experienced in years: control. As evening approached and the city lights began to twinkle below, Marina picked up her phone and dialed the number for Elite Hamptons Rentals, the same company her family had apparently used to book their reunion venue. Her pulse quickened as she explained that she was the owner of 247 Ocean Drive and wanted to make her property available for luxury rentals. The agent was thrilled. Premium beachfront properties were always in high demand, especially during the spring season. Within an hour, Marina had arranged for her house to be listed and promoted specifically to families looking for large group accommodations, knowing her family's tendency to upgrade when given the opportunity. The following morning, Marina stood in the marble-floored lobby of her building, designer luggage at her feet, as she waited for her driver. She'd taken a leave of absence from the company, something she'd never done in the 5 years since founding it. Her executive team was more than capable of handling operations, and frankly, Marina needed this break more than she'd initially realized. The previous evening had been spent making arrangements. She'd booked herself into a boutique hotel 20 minutes away from her own property, ensuring she could observe the reunion from a safe distance. Her phone buzzed with a text from the rental agent confirming that the Rodriguez family had indeed inquired about her property and were scheduled to view it that afternoon. The drive to the Hamptons took 3 hours through surprisingly light traffic, giving Marina time to think about what she was really trying to accomplish. Was this revenge, justice, or simply a way to feel some control over a situation that had left her feeling powerless for half a decade? The landscape gradually shifted from urban sprawl to suburban neighborhoods, and finally to the exclusive coastal communities where old money and new money coexisted in an uneasy truce. Marina had fallen in love with this area precisely because it represented possibility, the chance to build something lasting and beautiful without the weight of family expectations. Marina checked into the Seabrook Inn under her middle name, Elena, and requested a room with an ocean view. The boutique hotel was charming and discreet, exactly the kind of place she'd choose for a genuine vacation. From her third-floor window, she could see the coastline stretching in both directions, including the general area where her property sat, nestled among million-dollar estates. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. She was paying to stay in a hotel while her estranged family enjoyed the luxury of her own home, completely unaware of who had provided their accommodations. Marina unpacked slowly, trying to process the surreal nature of what she'd set in motion. Part of her wondered if she should reveal herself immediately, but a larger part was curious to see how this would unfold. That evening, Marina drove past her own property for the first time in months, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she saw multiple cars in the circular driveway. The house was ablaze with lights, and she could hear the distant sound of laughter and conversation drifting from the back patio. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she caught glimpses of familiar figures moving around the open-concept living space she'd designed herself. Her cousin Sophia was setting up what looked like a buffet in the dining room, while her uncle Miguel examined the artwork on the walls. The sight of her family enjoying her space without knowing it belonged to her created a strange mixture of satisfaction and loneliness. Marina woke to the sound of seagulls and spent her first full morning walking along the public beach, careful to avoid the private section that belonged to her property. The Hamptons in early spring were beautiful but not yet crowded, with only the occasional jogger or dog walker sharing the pristine sand. She dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back under a baseball cap and sunglasses covering her eyes, a deliberate attempt to remain inconspicuous if she encountered any family members during their stay. The salty air and rhythmic waves provided a meditative backdrop as she considered her next move. Should she continue observing from afar, or was it time to make her presence known? The question felt heavier than the morning ocean breeze. Around noon, Marina positioned herself at a beachside cafe with outdoor seating that offered a clear view of the pathway leading from the private beach access. She ordered a lobster roll and iced tea, settling in with a book as her cover while keeping one eye on the comings and goings of her property. It didn't take long for familiar figures to emerge. First, her teenage cousins, racing toward the water with boogie boards and enough energy to power a small city. Then came her Aunt Carmen and Uncle Roberto, walking hand in hand and pointing out details of the magnificent house to each other. Marina's heart clenched when she saw her parents appear, her mother wearing the same floral sundress style she'd favored for decades. The afternoon brought more family members to the beach, and Marina found herself involuntarily cataloging the changes 5 years had brought to each person's appearance and demeanor. Her cousin David had gotten married and brought his new wife, while Sophia appeared to be pregnant with what would be her second child. The family had grown and evolved without her, creating new relationships and celebrating milestones she'd only heard about through mutual friends, social media posts. The exclusion hit her more forcefully than she'd expected, sitting alone at her table while watching the easy intimacy of people who'd shared holidays, birthdays, and everyday moments she'd been barred from experiencing. Her mother seemed to be coordinating activities with the same authoritative efficiency Marina remembered. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Marina made a decision that surprised her with its spontaneity. She paid her check and walked deliberately toward the private beach access, her heart pounding as she approached the boundary of her own property. The family was gathered around a fire pit someone had built in the sand, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories in the growing twilight. Marina stopped just outside the circle of light, close enough to hear her father's voice telling the same joke about fishing that had made her laugh as a child. Her mother was helping the youngest cousins with their s'mores, displaying the patience and gentleness that Marina had almost forgotten existed beneath her rigid expectations. "Marina?" Her cousin Sophia's voice cut through the evening air like a knife. causing every conversation around the fire pit to stop abruptly. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her, reflecting a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that might have been hope. Marina stood frozen for a moment, suddenly aware that she hadn't fully planned what she would say when this moment arrived. Her parents remained seated, her mother's face cycling through emotions too quickly to read, while her father slowly removed his reading glasses, as if trying to confirm what he was seeing. The fire crackled in the silence, sending sparks up toward the star-filled sky, while the ocean provided a constant backdrop of waves that seemed to whisper encouragement for someone to break the tension. What are you doing here?" her mother asked finally, her voice carrying the same tone of controlled disappointment that had marked their last conversation 5 years ago. Marina took a deep breath, tasting salt air and smoke, and the courage she'd been building for half a decade. "I live nearby," she said simply, which was technically true, even if it omitted several crucial details. "I saw the family was in town and I thought maybe enough time had passed." Her Uncle Miguel stood up slowly, his expression softer than her parents', and gestured toward an empty chair someone had brought from the house. "Sit," he said gently. "We're all family here." The conversation resumed slowly, with her cousins sharing updates about their lives while carefully avoiding direct questions about Marina's own circumstances. She learned that Sophia was indeed expecting her second child, that David's wedding had been a small ceremony in Puerto Rico, and that several family members had started new businesses or changed careers during her absence. Marina contributed selectively to the discussion, mentioning her work in technology, without revealing the full scope of her success or the nature of her current living situation. Her mother remained notably quiet, occasionally glancing at Marina with an expression that seemed to waver between curiosity and disapproval. Her father asked polite questions about her health and general well-being. As the evening progressed and the fire burned lower, Marina found herself studying the house behind them, her house, with new eyes, seeing her family move comfortably through the spaces she'd designed, using the kitchen she'd planned, sleeping in bedrooms she'd furnished, created a surreal sense of displacement. They'd adapted to the luxury accommodations with the easy acceptance of people accustomed to quality, commenting favorably on the attention to detail and the thoughtful amenities without realizing they were praising her taste and investment decisions. Her mother had particularly appreciated the gourmet kitchen, mentioning how much she'd enjoyed preparing the traditional family recipes in such a well-equipped space. The next morning, Marina was having coffee on the hotel's terrace when her phone rang with a call from the property management company. "Ms. Rodriguez," the agent said, "we have a small situation at your Hamptons property. The current guests are asking about extending their stay, and they specifically want to know if they can meet the owner to discuss a potential purchase. They're offering significantly above market value and seem very serious about making a deal." Marina nearly dropped her coffee cup, her mind racing through the implications of her family wanting to buy her house. The irony was so perfect it felt like something from a movie. Her parents, who had disowned her for her business choices, were now unknowingly trying to purchase the result of exactly those choices. Marina spent the morning walking the beach and thinking about what this purchase offer really meant. Were her parents trying to establish a permanent presence in the Hamptons, or had they simply fallen in love with a house that happened to represent everything she had built without their support? The property had been more than an investment for her. It had been a symbol of independence, success, and the life she'd created outside their expectations. Selling it would mean letting go of that symbolism, but keeping it while allowing them to remain ignorant of her ownership felt increasingly dishonest. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia, asking if she wanted to join the family for lunch. Marina arrived at the house, her house, shortly after noon, parking in the circular driveway with a surreal sense of coming home to a place that was simultaneously familiar and foreign. Her family had made the space their own in subtle ways, with beach towels draped over furniture and children's toys scattered across the pristine hardwood floors. Her mother had reorganized the kitchen to suit her cooking style, moving appliances and utensils in ways that somehow made the space feel more lived in and welcoming than Marina had ever managed during her brief visits. The lunch was traditional Puerto Rican fare, her mother's recipe for mofongo and pernil that filled the house with aromas from Marina's childhood. As they ate together at the dining table she'd selected herself, Marina felt the weight of her secret pressing down. During dessert, her father cleared his throat and addressed Marina directly for the first time since her arrival. "We owe you an apology," he said, his voice carrying a heaviness that suggested this conversation had been rehearsed among the adults. "We've had 5 years to think about how we handled your decision to leave medical school, and we realize we let our pride and expectations hurt our relationship with you." Her mother nodded, reaching across the table to place her hand over Marina's. "We were wrong to give you an ultimatum," she continued. "Family should support each other's dreams, even when we don't understand them." The words Marina had waited years to hear were finally being spoken. Marina took a deep breath and set down her fork, knowing that the moment for complete honesty had arrived. "I need to tell you all something," she said, her voice steady despite the earthquake of nerves beneath her calm exterior. "This house that you're renting, that you want to buy, I own it. I bought it 2 years ago with money I made from my company, Rodriguez Digital Solutions." The silence that followed was so complete, she could hear the ocean waves through the open windows and the distant sound of children playing on the beach. Her parents stared at her with expressions that cycled through disbelief, confusion, and slowly dawning comprehension. Her father was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "You own this house." The revelation shifted the entire dynamic of the gathering, as family members began to understand the full implications of what Marina had accomplished and orchestrated. Her mother walked through the house again, this time seeing it through new eyes, recognizing that every detail they'd admired had been chosen by her daughter, that the space they'd found so welcoming had been designed with exactly this type of family gathering in mind. Her father examined the business documents with the analytical mind that had made him successful in his own medical practice, slowly realizing that Marina hadn't just succeeded despite their rejection. She'd built something extraordinary. The afternoon was spent in long conversations that gradually rebuilt bridges that had been burned years earlier. Marina explained her journey from medical school dropout to successful entrepreneur, sharing stories of late nights, failed ventures, and the eventual breakthrough that had led to her company's success. Her parents listened with the attention they'd never given her dreams when she was younger, asking questions about her work and expressing genuine interest in the technology solutions she'd developed. Her mother admitted that she'd often wondered about Marina's life but had been too proud to reach out, while her father acknowledged that his own fear of failure had made him unable to support his daughter's willingness to take risks. The conversation wasn't easy. Years of hurt couldn't be healed in a single afternoon. As the sun set on what had become the most emotionally significant day of Marina's adult life, her family gathered once again around the fire pit, but this time she was truly part of the circle, rather than an observer from the shadows. Her parents announced that they wanted to establish a tradition of annual reunions, and they asked Marina if she would consider making her house available for these gatherings, not as a rental, but as a genuine family home where multiple generations could come together to strengthen bonds that had been tested but not broken. Marina agreed, understanding that the house had finally fulfilled its intended purpose not as a symbol of her independence, but as a bridge back to the family connections she'd never stopped wanting despite years of rejection.